Greetings and salutations, my friends, and welcome to another video. Today, I want to talk to you about FM21. We do this every year. I have lots of fun thinking of things that I want improved, and that they just ignore me. Sports Interactive just generally ignore me. So I'm going to give you 5 of the biggest things I think that needs to be improved, or new things that they need to put into the game. One of which, it's never going to happen this year, but I'm going to include it every single year because it's probably the most important thing that they need to change, and I'm going to leave it in until they do it and then claim credit for it when they do it. So 5 things, and there's a little sort of bonus one at the end there because there was just one little thing that I had just to get off my chest and stuff. So let's talk about it, just a sort of, a relaxed chat about it, but also I'm sure somebody from Sports Interactive maybe watches these videos and stuff, and it might not be a thing that can be put in this year because it's pretty much finalised at this point, but it's all ideas are good ideas. Well, not necessarily. All ideas are ideas, and they might note a few down. So please feel free what you'd like to include, what you'd like to improve in the comments below. So, first one. This was put forward. I'm sure people have had the ideas, but basically, it's not just my ideas. It's people in the Discord. I asked everyone in Discord, if you want to join, the link is in the description, what they would like to be improved for next year's, or new stuff, or fixed stuff, or anything like that. So the first one I'm going to talk about is a guy called Meowsley, he's actually not Jamaican, but his name's Meowsley. He's not even a rapper. And he came up with this brilliant idea, and that is warming up of players. Just, Miles bangs on about it all the time. When everybody suggests something that's not football management, he sort of says, no, we're a pure football manager simulation. And this is something that should be in the game. So we're talking during a match, all your substitutes have some sort of little meter or percentage or colour or whatever it is of like some sort of readiness meter. And just like in real life, it comes to the sort of 50th minute and you're thinking of making a 60th minute sub. You might tell your 2 midfielders to go warm up, and they start doing their thing on the touchline and their readiness goes up and improves upon. And I think that could be a really nice little immersive thing. And that would mean that, let's say, for instance, if there was an injury, let's say your left back breaks his leg, right? You have to obviously then instantly sub someone. And that sub, because he's less ready, because he didn't get time to warm up, has a sort of slightly higher risk of injury, just like real life. So that adds a little element to the game. But as a general rule of thumb, just have them getting ready. So plan out your strategy and stuff like that. And you can also add some little fun stuff to that sort of side of things. Is that if you continually ask somebody to warm up and then never sub him on, he might come chat to you a later date and say, hang on, boss, you keep doing this to me, but you never actually sub me on. Or even better, you've got an unhappy player that wants to leave. Lionel Messi, for example. And you go tell him to warm up. Not that you'd ever be a sub. But if you go tell him to warm up and he just refuses to do it. Let's call it the Kepper. Although different, he was coming off. But you know what I mean. And I think it just adds an extra element of immersion. It makes you plan for your future subs. They're not just off-the-cuff things. And then it adds so that if there is instant subs, they've got a little bit of a higher chance of injury. I think that's a really good little thing in-game that would help with immersion, for realism and all that good stuff. And I think it'll be quite simple to implement. So I don't think that's it. So, number 2, I need a drink for this. Because this is a bugbear of mine. Oh, I'm on the PG tips. That's good shit. Right. Okay. Just trying to not get mad. Okay. AI transfers. They need to be completely redone, in my opinion, and I'm sure your opinion. I think this is one we can pretty much all agree on. Let's say I'm Derby County. I don't know why that one team came to my head. And you've got a central midfielder, and let's say he's valued at 500,000. And he's 28. He's not going to get a ton of money. He's not been playing too much. So you offer him to clubs, all the clubs, for 500,000. Okay, that seems realistic. That's fine. Okay. So how is it that 23 clubs will decide they're interested in this player, and then somehow will get together, maybe on a Zoom call, and all decide, all 23, that they're going to offer 135 grand plus 50 grand if he plays 10 games or something. And it's the exact same offer from every single club. And that's just really, it just takes away from the realism of it. It's ridiculous that all these clubs would get bid the exact same amounts and stuff. And I think that can be really really annoying. Another thing with transfers is that what's the point of setting a transfer value of somebody? So I've got a player that's worth 100 grand. I'm a small team, and he's like my star player. So I've put an asking price on him of 10 million. What is that for because the AI completely ignores it? So I'll get an offer from Wrexham, and they'll say, do you want 80 grand for him? And I'm like, okay, I understand if it's 10 million, you might come in and lowball it a bit, and then we'll negotiate. But when I've set the asking price to 10 million and you're bidding 80 grand, I'm not going to accept that. And then also on top of that is that a team will put in a bid for your player, 100 grand for a random player, and you go, no thanks. And then they'll come back a week later and go, what about 100 grand? And you're like, no, I'm good. Week later, 100 grand? It's the Jadon Sancho. It's the Man United Jadon Sancho effect, I'm calling this one. The AI either should up the bid or stop bidding. And I feel like when you're setting an asking price that's supposedly... It must be a public thing, because why would you set an asking price for yourself? So it must be there for a reason that this is how much we want for this guy. I'm not saying transfer listed, I'm just saying when you set the asking price, that they should sort of just... If they're not going to bid anywhere close to it, just don't bid. And I think just much more variation in the transfer offers, both for AI. I got a lot of suggestions in the Discord from people saying that it's ridiculous when a player is valued at 100 grand and you bid for a player and they say they want 50 million. That's unrealistic. I disagree with that. That's how it's the equivalent. It's basically saying he's not for sale. So if I'm running a football team and you come in for my goalkeeper and say, look, here's 10 grand, and I don't want to sell him, rather than just saying he's not for sale, I'll say some extraordinary fee that if you're crazy enough to pay it, fucking yeah, go for it. You can have him all day long. If you want to spend £10 million on my one-legged goalkeeper, you go for it. So that's not a problem in my reason. They're just saying he's not for sale. And I think that's fine. But I think just the AI, it needs to mix things up. It needs to have a randomness factor to the bids that make more sense. And I want bids that up every time. And I want people to stop bidding ridiculously small amounts for players repeatedly that are valued much higher. So that just annoys me, especially because I've been doing this Brazil Wonder Kid save on Twitch. And it is constant bids all the time for my players. And yes, you can sort of set the value and say reject all offers below and stuff, but I like to see the transfer offers, especially because if they've got all the clauses and all sorts of stuff, it's just a bit ridiculous. Okay, so the third thing, and this is a sort of culmination of little ideas, and it's stuff to do with the manager. Now, I totally accept when Miles talks about not being able to spend your wages that the manager earns on things like houses and girlfriends and cars and stuff like that, like you did in, was it FIFA Manager or whatever. That's fine. That's not Football Manager. But let us pay for a coaching course, will you? Like, it's our own coaching course, especially when you're at little clubs that don't have much money. Like, let us just pay for our own coaching course. Or let us suggest it, like, ask to have a coaching course, and they say, yeah, we'd love to, but we can't afford it. And then you can offer to pay for it. And they're like, yeah, go for it. Cool, we've got some time. You know, other things like offering to take a pay cut when the club you're a small club and they're in financial trouble, and you just say, look, I'll take half the money for the next year or something, or even put money into the club and stuff like that. I think that's really important. And also things like coaching courses. And if you're doing a small club save or a journeyman save, coaching courses are so incredibly important that allow us to, when we negotiate a contract, as part of that, say that you will guarantee me to send me on a coaching course or 2 coaching courses or whatever it is, because that just makes makes sense. And the last bit, also, like when in the negotiations part of your own contract, it's weird how with players the negotiations can vary drastically, but when you're negotiating as your contract, you up it by like, oh, I want an extra £1 a week, and the board are like, fuck off, mate, come on, we're not made of money. It's such small wiggle room when it's for managers, but that's fine. Also, in the contract negotiations, what about saying, okay, I'll sign this 2-year deal, but I want to be sent on a coaching course, and I also want a guaranteed transfer budget next season of 10 million quid. You know, something like that, of other clauses like that you'll guarantee to get, which happens, I'm assuming, a lot in real life, especially at the sort of bigger clubs. And the last thing with managers is the manager attributes. The attributes themselves are fine, but they are broken as to how and why they improve. You could win the Champions League in 12 different countries, and it will say your adaptability is 1, which is your ability to do well in other countries. Like, as somebody who's done a lot of journeymans, they don't really work that well, and maybe it's because people don't care about them that much, that it's not really important or high on SI's radar, but they definitely need to be fixed. Okay, number 4. I'll get to my big one in number 5 that definitely won't happen this year. But number 4, this has been suggested a lot, and I absolutely adore this idea. This is the ability to become the reserve manager or the youth team manager of a team. Yes, you can do B teams, I think, but that's very different. I would like the ability, especially as somebody who likes to sort of start at the bottom and work their way up. So many managers started off somewhere else. Most managers didn't just get the top job. Even at a small team, a lot of managers were a coach, which is fair enough. That's not in the game. That's fair enough. It's football manager. But let me be a football manager of the reserve team or the under-19s. And as part of that, I wouldn't have control over transfers. I wouldn't have control. Maybe I had to talk to the manager over which players were available. Or maybe the manager will say, look, I need you to use the same system we're using, which is a 4-4-2, which might limit you a little bit. There's tons of really interesting stuff you could do there. And also, it has the side benefit of allowing new players to come into the game and not have to worry about big sections. Imagine if you're, I don't know, Man United under-19s manager as you come in. Ollie could say, we play this tactic, we're going to play 4-3-3. So he gives you the tactic. So you have no ability to change the tactic because he wants you to play the same way as the senior squad, which is realistic. And then you don't have to buy players. So as a new player, like half the game is I don't have to worry about yet. That's great. I can just concentrate on picking the right team, working in training, doing all the sort of stuff, just winning matches and stuff like that. And then eventually you get a senior job somewhere at a lower league team, and then that extra section gets introduced. I think it's a really good pathway for newer players to get into the game as well. And just for immersion value, I'd love to manage an under-19s team. It'd be so many different little extras to the game, you know, like, oh, you know, your star young striker gets called up to the senior squad because there's an injury crisis or whatever, or trying to battle or something like that. I think maybe the reason why it's not already in the game, because it feels like it should be, like it's still Football Manager, so nobody can say anything about that, is that it then relies on the AI manager, the senior squad, like making transfers and doing the right thing. And maybe you'll end up with too many holes. Like you might end up with like 10 centre backs and 3 grayed out midfielders or something like that. But that's what part of the game. As long as they can sort of improve that a little bit, I just think it'd be so much fun. Like making a career, working your way up from, you know, a League 2 under-19s team, and then finally getting a big break in a job as an actual manager and stuff. I think that'd be so good, especially for like immersion and just, you know, realism. It's just realistic. But that's definitely, I think, I'd love to see. Right, the final thing I'm going to talk about, and this will be included on every single list until the end of time probably, and that is the match engine. Now, the match engine, the look of the match engine is not too bad. I think people are crazy if they expect it to look like FIFA. FIFA has hundreds of people and bazillions of pounds to make that game look the way it is. And although like Sports Interactive is nowhere near like an indie developer or anything, they sell millions of copies every year. I don't expect that level of graphics. The level of graphics I think can definitely be improved. But what I talk about when I'm talking about the actual engine itself is that there needs to be, at this time in the year 2020, I don't know, I looked at the clock. Is it 2020? Yeah, it's 2020. In the year 2020, there needs to be unit collision in Football Manager. Players need to actually hit each other. It feels even silly suggesting this at this point. It's like, well, of course they should, but they don't. You will see it every single game. Players just phasing through each other. None of the players and stuff are connected. You'll see, look at pretty much every red card, every two-footed lunge or scissor kick that you ever see. The guy does a lovely scissor kick, double-footed tackle thing, and that animation will look cool. But it's very rare that ever goes anywhere near the actual player. And the reaction, there needs to be just unit collision. I want to see if my centre back plays a long ball over the top and my striker and their defender are both running for the ball, shoulder to shoulder, like barging each other out of the way. I want to see a bit of that. All you get now is that they're kind of running a sort of 100-metre race, no touchings allowed. And then sometimes, occasionally, one of them will just sort of dart off in a different direction. And I'm assuming that's because he got sort of shoved out of the way or something. But that's in my own mind. I think we're to the point in technology where we should really be looking for collisions, actual pushing and shoving a bit. It doesn't have to be FIFA levels and stuff. And at least get a ton more animations in the game. The game is lacking a ton of animations. You'll see sometimes in the 3D match engine, obviously. This is all obviously 3D match engine. Like a guy makes a tackle and the guy falls over and it just looks terrible. And that's because it can't find an animation that actually looks realistic to that situation. So it picks X animation because that's the one where he falls over, but it made no sense to the situation. So I think a ton more animations need to be put in, at least, even if you're not going to do this new match engine, just like loads more animations, even a sort of shovey animation, even if it's tough without the new match engine, but that's just part and parcel of it. Another just a little thing that always irritates me, and this has been in the game for years, is when the ball's going out of play and your guy runs over to the ball, full sprint to try and keep it in, and then back heels it to keep it in, and then obviously his momentum carries him off the pitch. And they do that too regularly and in such dangerous positions sometimes, because he's out of play now, and you just stopped the ball on the line to give it to the opposition, and they do that so regularly still that needs to be fixed. Like, a lot of times, they're just let it go out. It's a fucking throw-in. Nobody panic. It's fine. But they always try and keep it in, which I also hate. And the last thing, in regards to the sort of look and feel of the actual match engine and the game itself, is that they need to do some work with stadiums and the surrounding areas. Like, the backdrops, and I mean, not the stadium, but past the stadium, are terrible. Like that, I love this game to bits, but there is, if you look at it in detail, if you sort of pause it and just have a look around, it's like embarrassment levels of detail. Even the sort of resolution is horrific. Sometimes you'll see trees that are just the size of mountains, and sometimes you'll be playing in a non-league side in the middle of the New Forest, and yet all around, as far as I can see, is just concrete. Like, I obviously don't expect them to have realistic stadiums and the real life stadiums. That would be crazy. But there needs to be a system in games so the game knows that this place is rural. Like, let's say you create, you're managing a rural team in somewhere lush and green and stuff, and then the game should tag that as a rural. So the backdrop should be more hilly and, I'm not expecting great detail, but it should be a bit more realistic, and it should be greener. And then if you're in the middle of Birmingham, then expect concrete everywhere. It's weird when I'm managing in the middle of the Brazilian rainforest and my tiny stadium has a multi-story car park like on it, like right above, like there's so many weird stuff. So I think the game needs to filter what objects it uses for the stadiums. And also there'll be like, you've got a 1,000 seater stadium, but somehow it looks like it could hold 20,000. There needs to be more smaller stadiums built for the game, like little just one stands, and more like non-league type fields and stuff with just a tiny little stand that holds 60 people and that sort of stuff. Because when you're down there and you're still seeing like big stadiums, it's weird. And then you'll get giant stadiums at big clubs and they'll have no corners and you know, there's lots of work that could be done. And the final bit on that is around the edge of the stadium, there's always objects. You know, the burger van, the giant football, because every stadium's got a giant football, the picnic bench. And every stadium, big or small, seems to have these sort of assortment of about 20 items randomly placed everywhere. And they just need to increase that a bit or just change it up a bit, because that whole thing looks kind of embarrassing, really. But the main thing for me is, and I think that does matter. Maybe they're thinking it's not really important, but I think for immersion value, when I'm managing a non-league club in the middle of fucking nowhere, I want it to be green and I want my stadium to look like a non-league club. Not just the pitch. I want my stadium with the tiny little stand. It helps with immersion. But obviously the main thing I want is really the match engine, collision, detection, no phasing through players, no balls passing through people's chests, you know, that sort of thing. If you really look at the 3D, if you watch it closely, you'll see just all the time how that happens. Because imagine actual players battling for a ball or battling for a header. Oh, it'd be glorious. It'd be like a modern video game. And okay, so that's my 5. I just want to say this little final thing. Can we fix player ratings, please? Now, for me, I don't play the game massively in depth. I don't go into all the analysis tools and heat maps and all this sort of stuff. So for me, the player ratings are quite a big part of how I select players. Obviously, I look at sort of, you know, pass completion and tackle success and key passes and stuff like that. But it should be a rough idea of how well this guy is playing. And generally speaking, it is. But there's 2 positions that I think their ratings are wrong, and there's 1 position that I think it's too good. So the first one, you all know what I'm going to say, the goalkeeper. A world-class goalkeeper gets an average rating of 6.8. A terrible non-league goalkeeper gets an average rating of 6.7. And I have tried everything in my powers to try and... I've sold and signed tons of goalkeepers. I've got them on a highline sweeper attack because he's a good passer. I've got him on a more solid, old-school goalkeeper that sits back and saves shots. Doesn't seem to matter if they're a £1 million player or a £100 million player or a £10 player, banging a solid 6.8. And occasionally, once in a blue moon, they'll get a 7 if they've saved 6 penalties and scored 3. They are broken. Defensive midfielders, I also think, are underly rated. I want to say underrated, but that's not what I mean. They're rated lower than they should be. It's really hard for a defensive midfielder or a ball-winning midfielder to get a good rating. So whether it's that tackles aren't... You don't get enough like points for a tackle or a simple pass or something like that. But they are, I feel like... And feel free to disagree or give me your thoughts and your suggestions in the comments. But I still feel like they are rated lower than they should be. And there's 1 position I think playmakers, especially deep line playmakers, are rated higher than they should be. Obviously, their role is to ping balls around and stuff like that. But I think they're just too high compared to the rest of the positions. Even a bad playmaker can get average 7.5 without any goals or assists, just playing passes constantly. So I think that needs to be fixed, because I think, especially for people like me who don't play in real heavy detail, and especially newer players, that they're going to go on that rating system quite heavily, and so I think that needs to be fixed. But there you go. There's my 5.5 things that I'd like to see added to the game. If I had to guess if any of these are going to be added, let me take you through it. Warm-up players. No. Not this year. I think it should be included at some point. I think that's a good idea. I've never heard any rumours of it. I have no more information than you guys, by the way. I don't get access to the game or anything like that. I buy it for myself every single year at the same time everybody else does. But I don't think that'd be included. That'd be quite a surprise, but it'd be good. This one, the AI transfers, I think this could be one of the big features. Obviously, I'm going to give a little bit of leeway to Sports Interactive, more so than normal, because of COVID. They missed months at work, and then they've been working from home. And obviously, as a developer, you can work from home, but it's still a damn sight easier to work in a group, especially because a lot of these are meetings in person where they're showing people stuff. It's just a lot easier to do. So I'm not expecting a revolutionized game this year, let's just say. But I think AI transfers is something they could really put some time into and work on. So that would be great. Manager stuff would be a lovely addition. They don't seem that bothered about it because a lot of these suggestions about coaching courses and paying have been suggested for a long time and nothing's ever been done about it. Maybe. The reserve youth team manager. Oh, I'd love it. I'd love it if I could have one thing. I'd have that. It could be the main feature for this year because I don't think it would be the biggest amount of work to get it in the game. All the pieces are there. Let's go for that as the... Okay, let's go for that. Fuck it. As if it matters. That's going to be the headline feature for FM21. Okay, match engine. It's not going to happen this year. Of all the years with COVID and stuff like that. I'm hoping for next year. I've even said that I will take one version of FM that is half price, that's just basically all the players and teams updated and relegations and stuff done and any rule changes and then players that have transferred, all the roster updates, all that sort of stuff, and just have it as a half price game. And because they said, look, we're working on a new match engine that's going to come out. It's going to take a couple of years. So here's a little mini game and almost like a sort of FM21 DLC. And then that's cheaper. And then we're going to, next year, you're going to get this fucking amazing new match engine. That would be fine by me. But I don't see it happening definitely not this year. Maybe next year. Maybe the year after that. They recently said they had a new match engine, a new engine. I don't know where it is. Don't know where it's parked. Right, there we go. Please feel free to leave your suggestions in the comments below. What you think. What I'll be really interested to see is what you think will be the big release feature of FM21. The headline change or improvement or fix or new thing. Because, you know, they've gone through most of the stuff. So thank you very much for watching. Make sure I've got some videos coming out of some fun teams to manage in FM21 all around the world and stuff with some interesting stories and everything like that. So go and check those out. I've got tons of plans for FM21. So if you're interested in Football Manager at all, make sure you subscribe and hit the like button and join me. We're going to be doing a big fundraiser for a non-league club that I'm actually involved with. That's going to be huge, that I can't wait to do for FM21 when the full game comes out. But thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.